welcome everyone. Welcome, welcome, welcome. And I'm going to start us with our opening prayer. Which is our opening for phasing forward in faith formation. And I'll just pray and you could just silently pray along with me. Holy One, thank you for every seat that has been filled here today. For each mind and heart that fills the presence of this space, we thank you. You know what we are setting out to accomplish today. We have ideas, visions, and hints. We have talents, abilities, and time to work. Only you can see in perfect detail the end of every beginning, every project, every season, every life. Nothing is ever in vain, for even in mistakes and missteps are used for good. Bless this gathering today, all those present, as well as the lives of those we serve. Ready us to make every moment count. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. And now I believe it's Debbie Klein-Allen's turn.
There, welcome everyone. It's so exciting to see all of you here. Clearly this is a hot topic for all of us. And I know some of you have been working really hard at it and, attending all the webinars you can. And for some of you, it's just too overwhelming. Well, for all of us, it's too overwhelming. But so I'm going to share with you, I'm going to respond to the question for the next few minutes. What do we mean by phasing forward? And, that's a pretty open question. So you're going to get my personal take on this, but based on webinars and research and reading and talking with people that I've done, and my colleagues will balance out whatever I don't cover. My colleagues are most likely going to cover that for you. So phasing forward, it's a term that we've adopted because I first heard it when our bridge conference ministers used it and the conference used it. So my interpretation is, well, first of all, I'll go with the second word, forward. There is no going back. I think all of us struggle with our parishioners and some of us with our senior pastors about, wanting to keep worship the way it was to make everybody feel comfortable. Well, we can try, but I know a lot of people who have tried to be as close as possible. It just doesn't work. The digital ministry we're trying to provide can't use all of the same elements. Our safety that we're considering can't allow us to, have communion together, for instance. So we have to move forward. There is no going back. Phasing, we're taking it step by step, and of course, mainly it's based on our own safety, the safety of our congregations. If the virus becomes too prominent again, then we have to make sure we're ready to step back to the phase we were previously, not all the way back, but just being flexible enough to be able to move in phases, to think in phases, and make sure that we are doing the best work we can at any given point in time. Try something, evaluate it, and then be willing to adapt. I know for me, for so many, for all of us really, it's stressful, it's exhausting, but as long as you remember to take care of yourself first, we can get through this. And remember, you have colleagues. Here we are, all however many of us right here in front of you on your screen, plus. So we can do this, we will get through this. Now there's, somewhere I read the phrase, so the future we've been hearing about has arrived with a vengeance. Here we are. So I know there's a plethora of adaptive ideas, resources, methods, um, styles out there on the internet. And what we hope, we can't share all those today, and you've already seen a whole bunch of them. But what I hope that we will guide you in this morning is ways to help you choose and select from all that's out there in ways that are faithful to your ministry at your church. So I'm gonna just bring up 3 what I'm calling overarching focuses for you, our faith formation youth ministry leaders, based on facing forward. I think the first one, the most critical for me, in my understanding, is knowing what we're calling now, knowing your why. What is God calling your congregation to be? What is God calling your faith formation youth ministry to be for your congregation? What is God calling you to be in this time? And how is your program guiding your children, youth, and families to grow into this call for your congregation? So with every decision that you and your congregation make about phasing forward, be sure to ask yourself, is this following our why, our mission, vision, our goals? Why is this particular decision important? And if the answers don't match what you hope to be achieving, then you definitely need to reconsider or try something else. So that was number 1, know your why. Number 2, make sure you are on your church's phasing forward team, or whatever they're calling it. You are the one who their decisions are going to impact. I mean, it's going to impact everybody, but it's without your representation there, they may not completely understand what the impact will be on you, your volunteers, the families, the children. And so you are the voice of advocacy for the volunteers, the families, the children, in terms of what you are able to do safely, what would be too much, what you don't have the personnel for, what costs might be needed to move forward in whatever way they're saying. So those are the main reasons why we strongly promote that you make sure you're on that team. And hopefully your congregation's leadership is wise enough to make sure you're there anyway. So I'm going to share my screen momentarily. Make sure I choose the right, here we are, page. Okay, can you see the conference's website? Oh, I can't see you, so let me bring you back. Okay, nod your head if you can see it. Okay, good. I always want to make sure, because there's so many times that you don't. So here we are at sneucc.org. If you've not been there before, this is our new Southern New England Conference website. It doesn't have everything over here yet, but definitely go up here, COVID-19 and phasing forward resources, all kinds of amazing stuff. We try not to make it too overwhelming. It's being updated constantly. And so what I want to bring you to, take your, on your own time, take a look through all these categories. There's a lot of everything you can possibly need. But here, the highlighted one, guidance for phasing forward to in-person gatherings. And then I'm going to send you immediately down to develop your plan for youth, Sunday school, and faith formation. And these 2 files, documents, pages, are what Karen, Debbie, Kristen, and I have pulled together so that to help guide you. They've been up there since, I don't know, April and May. So example, here's a list of, define your why, questions for you to consider. So I'll let you look at that on your own. And then this is more for, this one's after you consider the questions, here are some other focuses for you to look at. Look at what your community is doing. How can you compare with that? Know that Sunday school is not the same. doesn't have the same issues, but you know, you may learn a lot from them, so on and so forth. Okay, so just wanted to make sure you get there. And finally, notes. Number 3, I call face the reality. I just think it's important that you, there is no best way to do this. Help them understand that you are not responsible for everything going right. You'll have to make sacrifices together. At the same time, and I know all of you are doing this already, be bold and experiment. And then be gentle with yourself. And when things may not have turned out the way you hoped, but don't give up. Don't shy away from doing what you know will keep your people safe and what will follow your congregation's call to what God wants you to do. And I think the last thing I want to say is and this comes out of the medical community, there is no ultimate safe way to move forward, to phase forward. It's all risk versus management. The virus is out there. And I appreciate Dr. Fauci's word, it's insidious. And we're all just going to do the best we can, manage our safety, and move forward in the most faithful ways we can. So I hope that is helpful to you. And Debbie, take it back away to what's next.
Thank you, Debbie. That was wonderful. So we're actually going to go into our first breakout room. I'm going to pull up a question for you to ponder in your breakout space. And the first question is, what do you need to make decisions regarding the future of in-person faith formation? So you can jot that down. So breakout room number 1, who is speaking, and the question again was, what do you need to make decisions regarding the future of in-person faith formation?
So I had the pleasure of being in breakout room 1, and I took some notes, Debbie, so I'll give you some quick bullet points. Staying on top of CDC and state guidelines, ever-changing standards, managing information seems to be, the time to spend to do that seems to be a continual challenge. How do we, weigh risk versus safety management? And the benefit of well-curated information is helpful. Folks are planning as if it will happen, but knowing that it may not. So remaining flexible and open to sort of, how decisions have to change in the moment. Parent surveys, communications with parents and getting, information from parents, having parents sort of be part of the conversation and part of the dialogue about making certain decisions, those kinds of things. So those were things that we talked about.
Great, thank you, Karen. Breakout room number 2.
We were number 2, and I think Karen covered our 2 top points of, what is the current safety protocols, making sure we're on top of that, and needing to know what the parents need. So many are zoomed out. How do we address that?
Great.
Number 3. Yeah, we also lifted up the parent input, but recognize that there are so many other demands on parents right now and stresses in terms of going back to school and the uncertainty there. So that's a challenge.
Thank you both, Debbies. Number 4.
4, we talked about all of what has been said. We did start to talk a little bit more in depth about, it's one thing that we definitely feel it's so important to stay connected to the parents, regardless of what the plan will be. But these are ideas to maintain the families we have, but then moving forward to even consider growth or new families. So we kind of moved into that thought process.
Great. Group number 5. Barbara, you're muted.
Number 5, our first item was support of the pastor.
Mm.
And then agreeing with Debbie Glenn Allen about being a voice on the Phasing Forward team at your church. Finding partners to help you, whether it's your board of Christian education or your teachers, to help you in the decision-making process. Watching the guidelines for the school openings and keeping an eye on how they're doing. And I believe most everything else was already covered.
Great, thanks, Barbara. Number 6.
Yeah, so we basically covered the same things. We wanted to know people's readiness in terms of numbers of coming back, and also their comfort level. And we also wanted to take the opportunity to ask them what things they need as parishioners, just because it's an opportunity to ask, maybe there's different things that we're not doing. So rather than just sort of figuring out what we need to do to put everything back, maybe it's an opportunity to start something new.
Group 7. Thanks, Corey.
A lot of the things that we talked about also have been covered. I would add, again, the communication with families being really important. Someone else brought up the point about figuring out what schools are doing and that their school system is doing a hybrid. So there's A groups and B groups, and in Sunday school with A groups and B groups being mixed, and what will that mean? And, sort of those considerations as well. I would add to that just some practical things like, what about our HVAC system and how does that work? And is that adequate? And what does that mean if we're going to be sharing the space with the preschool that rents from us? And some really clear, consistent communication amongst leadership around what's happening and when it's happening and how it's happening. Let's see. And just really clear guidelines from the church around protocol and things like that. Right now, we have a clear protocol, but it's not being followed in our pastor's on sabbatical. It's unclear who's supposed to enforce it and how that gets figured out. So it feels a little bit scary because there was an open house in the preschool and we didn't know about it. So it was like, wait a second. The only rule we have is no one goes in the church or the church buildings except for staff, and that's only briefly. It's like, wait. So it's a little, so the clear communication is paramount to make sure we're all on the same page. So that was ours.
Thanks, Jenny. I think we're up to number 8, or were you number 8?
I was number 7.
You were 7. Number 8.
Yes, hi, Debbie. Same thing. We lifted up a lot of concerns about best practices and the standards out there for gathering children of all ages in one space, and what if in fact that is something that's doable, and gentle communication with parents as they need materials at home to develop and practice being a church school teacher at home. How do we build faith in that? Faith opportunities within the home and support our parents. The one thing that we did lift up was the need for flexible and adaptive curriculums that can move between virtual and in person. And one of our members just made note of the Beatitudes curriculum from Illustrated Ministries, saying that that was a beautiful curriculum, and they are finding quite a lot of success in implementing that. So.
Thank you, Anne. Yes, indeed. That's good stuff. And if any of you are engaging with Compassion Camp, really good stuff. So by Illustrated Ministries. Number 9 again. Number 9.
I don't think we decided on who was going to talk, so I'll just start talking.
Thanks, Becky.
It seemed like the majority of us were really, it's a lot of repeating of what everybody else has said, but what are the safety protocols? How do we create fun, engaging, deep games and activities while being socially distant if we are meeting together, like let's say on a church lawn or outside? What are some ways that we can engage in that way? And then some of us were talking a little bit about when we're not in person, what are the technology needs that we have to have met so that we can meet as best we can virtually.
Thank you, Becky. And number 10.
I don't know that we picked a spokesperson either, but I don't think we had any amazing new information other than we did sort of discuss some preschool standards that are in some of our buildings and how we incorporate some of those protocols and expectations. There was some discussion about separating children from parents and older members of the congregation as they come to church when we're in person, so that they're whisked off, they have a drop off, they have a pickup, and there's not a lot of mingling with some of the older parishioners. Again, we talked about families, about guidelines, obviously support from the reopening team, and then just being flexible as well. So nothing super new, but we did chat.
Thanks, Cindy. So next on our agenda, we've actually invited Dawn Quinn to give us some information. Dawn is the director of the nursery school, or the Christian school that's at the Congregational Church in West Hartford. So she is really up and knows the guidelines for opening of her school. So she has joined us and she is going to talk now. So welcome, Dawn.
Hi, everybody. It's so good to see so many faces that I haven't seen in so long. I'm so excited to see you all. Jumping into the meeting as you guys are already in motion is a little bit difficult for me to know exactly what you've talked about or maybe what information you need from me, but I can tell you that I'm the education director at First Church Academy for Young Children in West Hartford, and we operate out of First Church of Christ Congregational. And so Lauren Doobie is our Christian ed person and will be doing all that programming. So I'm specifically in our preschool. So we operate from 7:30 to 5:30, and we provide care for infants through pre-K-5. So we did close down during the pandemic from March to June, March 13th to June, mid-June. We reopened June 15th. And so we are finishing our 9th week of successful operation, and knock on every piece of wood near you, everyone, please. We've had incident free, basically, and really issue free. There was a lot of work preparing to reopen, and we continue to work hard all the time. And the biggest piece of that is, of course, following all of the ever-changing guidelines and procedures and protocols that are always being updated by the Office of Early Childhood and the Health Department and the CDC. And so there's a lot of work in following all of those and revising and keeping the families, communicating all of that to the families as well. So on August 26th, we're going to reopen our regular program, our school year program, and we'll be welcoming twice as many children as we've been over the summer. And so that's a lot of the work we're doing right now, is trying to figure out how to safely bring in twice as many people into the building as we're currently receiving. So I'd be happy to answer any questions or talk about any aspects of our procedure, our protocol, or things that you're wondering about, since I have been open now for nearly 10 weeks.
So Dawn, thank you for being here. Having no connection right now with any preschools of any kind, public facilities, I just can't imagine little tiny ones, 2-year-olds, not touching each other. How does, I need a visual image. How does that work?
Yeah. So Yeah, social distancing in preschool isn't really reasonable. So, and it's certainly not reasonable on an infant, toddler, or two's end. I mean, this is childcare. You're going to pick up a crying baby. You're going to feed them bottles. You're going to comfort people. And kids are going to hug each other, and they're going to hold hands, and they're going to be near each other. So really, it's all about enhanced hygiene. It's all about what happens before and after everything they do. So there's a lot of hand washing going on the part of the staff as well as the children. But additionally, we are limiting the number of toys they have access to, and the rooms are set up in a way where they are socially distanced during a meal time. Let's say we give them a little more space at the table or at their high chairs. You know, I mean, believe it or not, you guys know babies throw food. So, you know, we have space between the high chairs. They have assigned high chairs, so they have the same high chair every day. And then we can also social distance during nap time. Cots are spread all over the room, and children are set up head to toe, not head to head, so that they aren't, you know, and they're staggered. I mean, as much distance as we can put around for that. But otherwise, just like daily play, when they're just engaged in learning centers or they're outside on the playground, they're just running around and kind of being who they are. I mean, we really wanted this to be on the adults, not on the kids. Like, I want them to feel like this is just a day for them, a day. Like, it just is what it is, other than everyone wearing masks. You know, they are very used to every adult has a mask on all the time. Preschoolers are not required to wear masks, but we would support mask wearing if parents wanted them to wear masks. And it's never advised for a child under the age of 2 and under to ever wear a mask. It's too difficult for them to breathe. So yeah, social distancing, it's just not really a thing. But yet the workaround on that is the enhanced hygiene and the mask wearing by staff, I would say.
And Dawn, what does that mean in terms of cleaning, additional cleaning that has to happen for the facility? How is that handled?
So that it's a 2-part process. So during the day, the teachers have bins in their room with sanitized and to be sanitized. So as toys are mouthed or handled, they're grabbing them, putting them in the to be sanitized bucket, and just putting out more different items. We have a sanitizing dishwasher, so we run a lot of things through there, and we also, any soft items, we've limited soft items. We've also pulled out a lot of our area rugs and just transitioned to mats. There are these wonderful mats they make now. They're colorful. They're actually super comfortable even for adults to either kneel on or sit on. They're thin, but they're completely sanitizable in the sense of you could wipe them down 10 times a day if you wanted to. You can spray them with your bleach solution, and that just takes another soft thing out of the equation. But yeah, a lot of washing of any soft items that are out. So the teachers are keeping an eye on that, and they're also doing high touch areas like faucet handles, doorknobs, cabinet doorknobs, things like that. But at night, our custodial staff does a massive clean. They really come through and do the major clean, and we have some sanitizing products that we didn't have before that you spray after everyone's out of the program. Obviously, you leave on, there's a kill time. He's got a whole process and procedure to it, but he does the major cleaning. He also sprays the walls like from mid-height down, where anyone might have done a little of this during the day. You know how kids are, they touch everything and then they lick. I mean, I watched someone with their mouth on the handrail the other day. I was like, please don't put your mouth on a handrail. But that's what they do. So we try to do as many surfaces as we can. We use cling, what is it called? Press and seal on our keypads. And I just change out the press and seal. But the press and seal allows us to wipe them as many times as we want during the day without damaging any of the mechanism. So we use press and seal on that. And it's really easy to use. You can put press and seal on anything that you want. Like you can put it on a telephone, or press and seal is great. And what else do we put around? We just have hand sanitizer everywhere. We limit our use of wipes only because they're super expensive, very hard to come by, and the OEC and the CDC are fine with your sanitizing bleach solution. So if you're creating your bleach solution daily and using the formula, that works too. And soapy water, just cleaning things with soapy water.
Any estimate on increased amount of time in the nighttime cleaning? I mean, that will translate into more cost for
It
the
will.
organization.
It will, because right now the broader church is not open. So our custodian is able to spend time, more time with us in our area. But the church was in a business team meeting last night. It came up. They're thinking ahead to how will that translate when the broader church is open and perhaps other groups are coming in. How are we going to still be able to maintain this really high level of cleaning in more spaces? And it very well could be more expensive. You might need a second person or a part-time person to assist.
So,
Hi, Dawn. It's Sally.
Hi, Sally.
It's nice to see you. We have a nursery in our church, and I was just wondering what the comfort level of your teachers are, and if you've had an extensive conversation with them about this extra responsibility that you have given, well, not you, but the world has given them.
Yes. We've been fortunate that all of our teachers willingly came back to work and embraced all of the different changes. Because the program is smaller this summer, we staffed it in a way where people had a little bit of breathing room on being able to do some of the cleaning. So we don't have everyone scheduled so tightly that they don't have time to go to the dishwasher and use that and get some things cleaned or spray some things down. And it's honestly, working as a team is probably the biggest piece. Like everybody is pitching in every area right now, because this isn't the time to say, well, that's not my room or my door or my this. We're all in it, and we all want to protect each other and the kids. So if you can encourage a super team approach, like we're all in this together. And I know we hear that constantly now, and it's just no one wants to hear it anymore, but we are all in this together. And I think that that's the best approach, because everyone's looking out for each other. They're noticing when something needs, to be done and just pitching in, but it is more work for everyone. And, I think, but really it's in the best interest of everyone. I mean, we're all doing all of this to protect everyone. So this is job security for them. This is, if they keep this place clean and we can get through and get to the other side, this is good for everyone. Families, students, kids, church as a whole, So, and you can be doing everything right. And I always say that there's no way to guarantee, we are mitigating risk. Everything we're doing is about mitigating risk, but I would never encourage a family to come to our school or to come to a program if they didn't feel comfortable. I feel like this is a personal decision. Everyone's circumstances are so unique. And I think it's really important to support everybody no matter what they decide to do. So if you choose to come, we're going to be here for you, and we're going to do everything we can. But if you choose not to come, we totally understand that. We get that. Everybody has to feel okay about it.
Thank you, Dawn. Thank you so much for coming. And
You're welcome.
what a valuable resource. You definitely eased my mind a little bit about the church nursery. So I hope that was beneficial to you. So
it's doable. And please just email me. I don't mind. I'll take a phone call or email anytime. Great. We've been talking about this constantly. So
thank you.
Anytime for anything.
Thank you so much, Dawn.
Right. You're welcome. Good to see all you guys. All right. Bye.
And so the next person we have that's going to give us some information is Kristen Putney, who is the another faith formation minister for the conference. So,
great, thank you.
The Rhode Island branch.
Yes, I represent the Rhode Island area. Hello, everyone. It's so wonderful to be in the presence of all of you. Dawn did a great job, and two things. One, she definitely hit it on the nail that we are in this together. and that definitely all of us thinking and recreating will get us through it. And I do feel like what you just said, Debbie, that we are somewhat at ease when we see these models, that if a lot of you do have daycares in your church setting, I do at my local church, which I work at the local church, it is comforting, and especially to have conversation, and they're really in the forefront of getting things in order, and they really have obstacles. So it's a great modeling. I love all the conversations we're having, and so much has already been said, and I've been enlightened, actually. I'm going to share the screen, and I have some things to share with you in regards to this. So let's see. So first off, when we were in our breakout room, and it was wonderful just to hear all the different ideas, and there was so many. I mean, I actually, in preparing, thinking about what do parents want us to know, and I have a list of 10, there's another 5 on another slide, but I'm realizing so many things that I actually didn't include. So I'm so thankful that we're thinking together. Our church, the local church that I work in as the director, it's a good sized church. We are not in person, but we are moving towards thinking about it. One obstacle, or the process actually is sending out a questionnaire to everyone, and it has a list of many different questions. Some of them do apply to families and children, but I was thinking, I haven't even really worked specifically on my church school and those families moving forward. I just know we're not going to be in person right away, regardless if we do go back to in-person worship. But as I thought about sharing information with you, I did put together many questions that I'm thinking I would ask my families. So here are them here. We've discussed many of them in our breakout of how we would go back, if we would go back. So perhaps thinking about in this list, it provides almost different phases. So whether it's clear that you're not going to be in person, either in worship or with children, how would you manage staying connected? That's the one big thing, actually, I think we mentioned in my breakout room, but in general, is that staying connected to parents, to the families, is so crucial. So if you're having an in-person worship, would they bring the children? I think that's really so important to your specific church community. And if they were going to bring their children, what ages? Because again, different ages require different space perhaps, and different learning abilities. When we was considering having in-person worship, we decided we wouldn't have it in the sanctuary, but we would utilize our big hall. And just like Debbie Klein Allen had mentioned, being an advocate for your church school children, we have on our regathering committee 2 church school Christian ed people. And so because we had those people in this conversation, we talked about if we were going to have an in-person worship, that we would want to maybe provide a family space. So maybe it would be in the back of the church, and maybe there would be 2 or 3 areas, and that way a family could exist, but little ones could be there, and they could bring your own toys, BYOT. So that was important. Moving down, maybe if you had a multi-age church school separate from worship, would they come? So I think that's the big factor here, is finding out the pulse of parents and what is their comfort level. You may be surprised to learn what they are interested in, or it may confirm we're not ready yet. Would you prefer to have an intergenerational style worship for all ages in person? And again, if that was available, would you bring your children? Or, if there was a way to have worship that's intergenerational and it's just virtual, would you watch it as a family? And I think that all these questions kind of guide you in what would fit best for your church community. If you had a virtual church school experience, maybe that's where everybody's going to land in the fall. You know, would they utilize it? Would they even say there's in-person worship and then you offer the some sort of virtual church school? And if that is the case, would they prefer an interactive live Zoom, which is beautiful? I know many churches that are doing that have done it all summer, and are planning to continue in the fall. But that there's beauty in that because it's interactive and it's live, but then it's at only one time. So other churches I know, and which I do as well, I do a taped video church school. I've done that since March, but I am considering a more interactive in the fall. But what was the beauty of a taped video church school is that it can be, you know, families can go on it when it's convenient for them. Another question to ask is, would they prefer to have a Zoom church school other than Sunday morning? So a different time frame. That might be helpful in figuring out what can you offer. And then this was mentioned too, that when they're going back to school in the fall, they're going to have so much at-home learning. Would it be beneficial to send materials and activities to parents? You know, would they utilize it? So I think that all these questions would be helpful. Another question that was raised, and I love this, is say you plan any of these parts and maybe they're phases, but will teachers and volunteers be ready if you're going to do it in person, or even if how are you going to manage church school for different ages if it's a Zoom? Will your teachers still be able to come on and be a part of that? So there's so many factors. So as we grasp a better understanding of the parents' needs for faith formation, then once you know it, you can plan ahead, and perhaps there are going to be a variety of options. I heard that said so much, that to be flexible and to be adaptive. One important thing I know that in all our ministries that's just crucial again is to definitely let the parents know we have to encourage them, we have to engage them, and certainly equip them with faith formation materials and options, especially during this time. And so I always go back to Deuteronomy 6, and I think that just staying connected with the parents is so important, and letting them know that together, you know, you will do faith formation, providing them, guiding them, encouraging them. Parents must be disciples first. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, all your being, and all your strength. These words that I am commanding you today must always be on your minds. And then the second part, whether they're aware of it or not, but it said, you know, recite them to your children. Talk about them when you are sitting around your house, and when you are out and about, when you are lying down, and when you are getting up. Tie them on your hand as a sign. They should be on your forehead as a symbol. Write them on your house's door frames and on your city's gates. So again, parents are the greatest influence on their children, and certainly now is the time. So I feel like everything that's being said, someone mentioned this, that we are starting something new. And so instead of, even though we're so uncertain, I don't know, there's something about this time that actually makes me excited, because I love to create. I'm an artist as well. And so I feel like this is such an opportunity we have to work hard and diligently, but creatively. And so as we move forward, maybe in the back of your mind, or really in the front, I think, consider that, you know, faith in the home is so important, whether you're going to eventually get into an in-person opportunity or not. But faith in the home, and how can we equip parents? Tracy Smith, love her books. This is her third book, highly recommend it. I'll send out the link. I don't think that's on our list of links that Karen has done a wonderful job providing. But this particular book has a downloadable PDF, and it has activities that are family friendly. Highly recommend that. And then these are several books that I love and I utilize combined with Faith at Home. And because we're dealing with so much stress, and some people are cranky, or we're doing things in new ways and it's not habit, or we're just out of sorts. So certainly mindfulness for children, and then coping skills. This is a workbook, and they actually can kind of go together, but certainly can work with Faith in the Home. And then this is, Karen provided some wonderful links, and this is on her list. And I love this idea, intergenerational pods. The fact that we're all, if you're a very sociable person and your families are in need of seeing one another, I love that idea of creating a quarantine pod or bubble. And in this particular scenario, you could work with 2 or 3 families, or maybe they're families that have the same age children, or maybe they're different types of families. So that's something to consider as we move forward. Also, there's another link, and this is by Gideon Litchfield. I loved thinking about this. So as you work with your families and maybe send out, if they can't meet in person, but have this opportunity to sort of create a bubble, just the name alone gets me excited. It feels like something new. So I really, I enjoyed just seeing how to go about it, because I think these, I don't know, there's 9 or 10 listed here that are crucial. So how do you begin? Agree to have no hard feelings. Think about risk. We've talked a lot about that. Talk about why you want to bubble up. Agree to all follow the same rules, whatever they are. Talk through your daily routines. Accept that none of you are being rational. I love that one, because really we're just trying and when I say this, I don't mean create this big physical bubble, although they do make balls that are bubbles that you could go in on. And then agree on what you'll communicate about. And then I love that, over communicate. Some people are really good at that. And then I love this one, maybe don't post about it on social media. And then give yourself a trial period. So those are great. It's a great guide to move forward, to have somewhat of an in-person experience, a safe in-person experience. And then last on the list here, just remember that you are all doing the best that you can at this time. Really and truly, everybody pat yourself on the back. I know when we come into large groups and then breakout groups, sometimes you hear what other people are doing, and it might make you feel like, oh, that's a great idea. Oh, I'm not doing that. And so you sort of set up whether you're doing enough, but really all of you are doing the best that you can do.
Scenarios that we perceive. And so I want to talk a little bit about preparations made to your physical space, about a clear plan for managing the environment, and about ways that you can train and support your volunteers. We've talked a lot today about information and where the are. We do have a PDF resource list to provide to you that's already been uploaded to our website, and we will direct you to that in the last few minutes of this time together today as we talk about where to find the resources, or remind you where to find the resources. But we do have a lot of good information, both in the questions and documents that Debbie Glein-Allen talked about this morning. Those documents contain some questions for maintaining safety for all that we need to consider. Things that are important, like what are some safe alternatives or adaptations to on-site events. So when we're in a realm of asynchronous learning and virtual programming, what are the safety adaptations we need to make there, including virtual safety, things like electronic communications with children and youth. Make sure that folks are well aware of what your standards are, and folks are being trained to and are compliant with your standards, right? Asking our question about what is feasible in our physical setting or environment as we create our plans And so doing a walkthrough in your space with a couple of folks, both staff and lay leaders who are responsible for your regathering plan, if that's something that you choose to do, it would be valuable to take a walkthrough of your space, imagine what spaces are going to be off limits, imagine which spaces are most conducive to small gatherings, imagine what in those spaces need to be treated and cared for the way Dawn described in her portion of the talk this morning. So you're going to create a plan that includes that. And then also, in answer to the question that Debbie Kirk asked of Dawn earlier, imagine what resource it will take to maintain those spaces as you move forward in your plan to resume physical gatherings in some way, shape, or form, especially if those are indoor spaces, right? When we talk about gathering for worship, I mentioned, a number of resources. The other resource that you really want to rely on right now is the resources provided to you from your insurance carrier, whether that's the United Church of Christ Insurance Board or whether that's Church Mutual or Guide One. Those are pretty much the top 3 carriers. I do a lot of safety training on behalf of the Southern New England Conference, and they are providing great resources. I will talk this morning about the insurance board resources because I'm most familiar with those. But as I said, you go to the Church Mutual website or you go to the Guide One website, and you're going to find comparable resources. So you want to review relevant literature from all the trusted resources, not only the ones that were mentioned this morning, like the CDC, like your local Department of Public Health, like your state guidelines for phasing forward, but you also want to review what your insurance carrier is offering you, because in the context of an accusation or a breach of liability or accusation of negligence, they're going to help you define what negligence is and to know what the various aspects of that kind of a litigation, what the implications of that kind of litigation. So they have a bunch of information out there. It's just simply under coronavirus 19 resources. They've chosen an NRSV passage from Acts to guide their work. The God who made the world and everything in it is the Lord of heaven and earth and does not live in shrines made by human hands. So again, we're always asking ourselves, are our physical spaces there to support our mission and ministry, or is there a way in which we have made sacred cows, right, or holy shrines out of our physical spaces? And what can we do virtually to move the mission and ministry forward if that's a decision we need to make because it is the safest, right? And how do we accommodate those who can't come back to the physical space? So we know that we have populations of vulnerable people, those who are older, those who have pre-existing health conditions, children. You may or may not be aware of the health conditions or challenges, the sort of ongoing chronic conditions that people might have that make them more susceptible or vulnerable to contracting the virus, as well as we don't know who are the carriers, the asymptomatic carriers. So, before each service, if you decide to return, some of the safety measures that are mentioned, and there are long lists of bullets on all of this documentation that you'll find at UCCIB, things like having folks take their temperatures before they come to church, or are you going to take people's temperatures? How are you going to manage that? A lot of retailers and other places are doing that to provide for the safety of their employees and the constituents that they serve. Dawn talked about disinfecting practices and sanitizing and cleaning practices. How are you going to do that, and what resources can you bring to bear to do that? So this is an individual decision, and each church is going to have different resources that they're going to be able to bring to bear and need to decide on just how much you can do to protect that environment and keep that environment safe. And if it isn't realistic in certain settings, then it's okay to do blended programming, you know, to have a plan for programming that includes asynchronous programming, and that's some of what Kristen talked about, you know, offering families playlists, or, you know, helping families to create pods or quarantines or bubbles, you know, whatever we do that is sort of an in-between or an intermediate step in this time, that we can make a variety of decisions to engage in a variety of contexts, and it doesn't have to be an all or nothing. You know, we're either back or we're not back. How will you handle if children are in worship? If you're having worship experiences, whether they're outside or inside, how will you handle children's moments, and how are, you know, how are families sort of being separated, physically distanced, so that they are able to be safe in those contexts? Let's see, IB guidelines, taking temperatures. So to create a plan, as Debbie mentioned early on, Debbie Glein-Allen, there are a lot of Debbies on today, but as Debbie Glein-Allen mentioned early in the program, start with your why. And once you've answered the question about your why, then your plan is going to continue by following up with the who, what, where, when, and how, right? So the 5 W's and an H, you know, those things that we learn about telling stories are applicable in terms of creating a plan. Why do we want to do this? Why will we do this program in this way and this program in another way? What developmental needs will it meet? What practical needs will it meet? Those kinds of things. Who is going to help to be responsible? The insurance board, in terms of making this decision, recommends that there's a team of people who, you know, sort of look at the information, process the information, and respond to the information with creating a plan that is the most workable for your setting. But that in an ongoing way, once that plan is made and you begin to implement different steps, that you should have a small team of folks, or an individual who is a COVID coordinator, somebody who can continue to help your church monitor and supervise safety plans. So monitoring and supervision is going to be key here. You know, who's responsible for, you know, seeing that that area that was deemed to be off limits, where large groups can gather, remains off limits. And, you know, who's going to continue to be responsible for decisions when different accommodations in a physical gathering setting want to be made, and folks need to turn to someone to say, I imagined using this space or this material in this way. Is that going to fall within the parameters of our guidelines, right? So making sure that you have clear guidelines, that people are trained to them, that your volunteers are trained to them and supported through them. And so just as Dawn talked about her staff having a buy-in, all of your volunteers are going to be stakeholders. And you're also going to ask them to make a decision on behalf of themselves, whether or not they're comfortable coming back to a certain type of programming, or being involved and engaged in a certain type of programming, and what is their decision. So my local church reached out to me as a perennial Sunday school teacher or church school teacher and said, what am I comfortable doing? And I was able to respond to the chair of the Board of Christian Ed and give her my perception of what I was willing to do this fall to be a volunteer in our church school ministry. But my answer to her may have been different than the other 6 teachers that she reached out to. So we're going to want to make sure that we support our volunteers, that our volunteers know how we're working to keep them safe, that they are partners in keeping themselves and our children and youth safe, anyone who gathers in our context, in our program, in our buildings. And I had a lot more to say, but I know that time is fleeting. So if I can be of help to you, any of you at all, in terms of safety, in terms of finding those resources, and in terms of volunteer management, my colleagues and I would be happy to say more about that in this time. But those are all important considerations for making this decision, right? Thank you.
And lastly, we're going to have Debbie Kirk talk to us about remembering our purpose.
Hi, everybody. Good to see you. I'm just going to show you a few images here. So I'm hoping you can see my screen. We have been through a lot, and you know, you might liken to some of the circumstances to weather. We're not in a blizzard. It's not an acute situation that will pass after a day or two. We are not in the season of winter where we adapt our lifestyle. We move inside, we have different activities, and then go to a new season because we know that will come. I would say, and some others have said, we are more in an ice age. And so it is important to think about our purpose. What is our purpose in all of this work? And you all have been amazingly creative and adaptive. And I think it's important to remember what is at the center. We are about forming disciples who will live the love and justice of Jesus. And that work is crucial. We know there's a lot of anxiety right now, but a couple elements of discipleship I think it's important to keep track of. Discipleship's a call to all of us. It's a decision and a process, and it's a lifelong commitment to growth and learning. So for all ages. Discipleship is for everyone, expressed differently by everyone, but you know, we've mentioned a little bit about discipleship of parents today, and how can we nurture not only children, but the whole family unit. So I think that's a consideration. And remember that discipleship is transformative, and it impacts all aspects of our lives. And what we are sharing as faith forminators is so valuable. And as many have said already today, discipleship is relational. It's a gift that we pass on one to another, and it's also shared in community. So just a few key elements of that. But also to think about what, for your own setting, to think of what are the elements you use for making disciples. And we've named in our programs that there are a lot of different things that we lift up. We celebrate being part of community. We connect to our stories of faith. We teach about spiritual practices, prayer and meditation that help bring comfort to children and to families in this time of tremendous anxiety. We're instilling values, teaching about morality and ethics. We're cultivating habits of service and generosity, and we are finding ways to worship. And again, we've had to adapt. We've had to do these things in new ways, but I think it's important to remember what are the pieces that are central to our work. We may be doing them in different ways. We may have a different method of delivery, but our goal is to help people know God and to grow closer to God. All right, next, thinking about when, where, and how do we encounter God. It's not just in the church, we know that, that we encounter God in nature. We can practice our faith in the school classroom. We can encounter God even through a Zoom meeting. And I think it's a good thing to remember that the church is not confined to the building, and the spiritual formation is not confined to a classroom. And so I think we can think beyond the building. Also, it's interesting to just recognize the many roles that we have. You might be a recruiter of teachers. You may have administrative duties. Obviously, we've named that there are going to be a lot more supervising aspects to our work. You may be a teacher of teachers, or you may be working directly with children or youth. Sometimes we're called to be preachers and prophets, and that can be an element of our work to connect to. Obviously, there's a major role of nurturing and being a role model for others, whether we recognize it or not. So it's important to, as I think Kristen mentioned, to tend to self-care, to nurture our own faith, and to find ways that we can grow in our own faith. And then also this idea of being a curator. We've got to sift through a lot of material and a lot of resources, and then bring the best ones to our setting. And that's something we try to do on the conference level, is to be constantly looking through new materials and try to put the best things up that we think are consistent with the United Church of Christ. And then I guess lastly, I would say our role is as a translator or an interpreter of faith. So a child or a family may have an experience at home, in the school setting, and we can help relate those experiences to our faith and look at them through the lens of faith, so that we see that children are belonging to God and beloved of God. So in this time, as we are moving through this wild year of 2020, we have had several months of pivoting, right? Where we had to shift quickly, we had to adapt and do things in a new way. And now I think maybe it's a chance for us to think of, how do we carry some of this innovation forward? Several people have said, we're not going back. We have to kind of embrace this idea of a new normal and let go of nostalgia for what was, and use this opportunity to continue to experiment, to continue to find new ways to form disciples. And that may be different delivery systems, it may be different means of connecting. And then I think also it's important for us to remember our role as leaders, that we can offer a non-anxious presence. You saw Dawn Quinn talking about her ministry with children and how she had the information at her fingertips. She knew exactly what her goals were. She was in cultivating teamwork and lifting up the fact that the main goal is to keep children safe and healthy. So we've got to be non-anxious in this work, but also understand you're going to get pushback. These are very stressful times, and you will hear things from many directions of people expressing their anxiety. But follow your vision and stay the course, and commit to following God and loving God. In this time, we have had several shifts, moving from analog to digital. I think everybody's getting very well settled with that. But we've also named, we are moving really from a model of teaching to equipping. I think we've heard, are there ways that we can equip a family unit to do more of the direct teaching or faith forming, and we can help them in that process. So that might be a shift in your work. Another is we're shifting from gathering to connecting. We know that the relationships are important, but are there different ways that we can connect, different ways that we can maintain those those important relationships in the community of faith. And then one more I would name is that's related is, shifting maybe from the idea of an attractional model where we're trying to get people to come to a place for a program. Can we accompany them? Can we walk with them? So those are some things that might be helpful as you're framing your work, thinking about how you're making disciples. Again, I want to just celebrate the work that you are doing, that you have been doing, the ways you've been adaptive and creative. And as we wrap up, we've named several options for programs, obviously online, things that we send home that families can use. There may be some kinds of gathered activities that we will begin to do or you have done. Those may be outdoors, they may be indoors, and then there may be some blended activities of all these elements that you bring to bear. But I think it's important to take that 30,000-foot view and remember that we are about forming disciples, and that work is crucial, and it is very valuable to these children that you are nurturing. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Debbie. So as we come to an end, I just want to say, as you can see, there's no cookie cutter answer to this situation that we're in. And I hope that you have gotten some more resources and information. And, Karen and Debbie Kirk and Debbie Glein Allen and Kristen, or each other, we're always available for, resources and conversation. And I forgot to say that Debbie Kirk is the Minister for Youth and Young Adult Ministries for the conference Connecticut Arms. So I introduced everyone else, but I forgot to introduce Debbie. So I wanted to give her props. And I also recorded all of your chats in a document. So we'll have that up available too. And so with that, I will take us out with some prayer and some blessing.